Hello everyone, welcome to the first video in my HTML learning journey. Today I'm starting with something very basic but also very important. What exactly is HTML? And how do we create our first web page? So let's get started. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. At first, that name can sound a little complicated, but the basic idea is actually quite simple. HTML is the language we use to give structure and meaning to content on a web page. For example, when you visit a website, you might see a heading, some paragraphs, images, links, lists, and other content. HTML helps the browser understand what those different pieces of content are. And the word hypertext is connected to links, the links that allow us to move from one web page to another one. So HTML provides the structure of a web page. Before writing any HTML, we need two basic things. The first one is a web browser, and the second one is a code editor. So for web browser, we can use Chrome, Edge, or Firefox to view our web page. For this series, I will use Chrome. And for writing the code, we can use a code editor like Visual Studio Code. There are many code editors available, so we don't have to use VS Code. I'm using it because it's a popular option and it gives me useful tools while I'm learning. So we can just copy this name and go through the web browser and choose any link which works for you, and then you can choose your operating system, and based on that download the VS Code. Once I have my editor ready, I can create a folder for my HTML project. So click on my VS Code, which I have already installed. For creating a folder, you can use different ways. I usually go through File, then I click on Open Folder, then I choose Desktop, the location that I want my folder to be located, then I click on New Folder, then I choose a name for it, for example, HTML Lessons for 2026, then click on Select Folder. On the left side of the VS Code, you can see the name of my folder is shown. Now let's create a file inside this folder. To create a file, you can click on a new file. For choosing a name, you can write index.html, then press enter. You will often see index.html used as the main or the default page of a website, although it isn't a rule that every HTML file must have this name. You can change the name. I'll keep my file names from now on to simple, lowercase, and the spaces. Now comes the interesting part. What does a basic HTML document actually look like? So, a very simple HTML document can look something like this. At first, this might look like a lot of symbols, but let's break it down. There is an important concept here that we should understand early in our HTML journey, which are elements and tags. For example, I'm sure you are familiar with this symbol and this symbol, which are called in mathematics less or greater. So these are, when we write something like this, is called a tag. The first one is called an opening tag, and the second one is called the closing tag. And inside these two tags, we can write our content, whatever we want. For example, I write hello world. So together these form an element. Together these form an element. And you will notice that the closing tag contains a forward slash. This one. Not every HTML element works exactly this way. Some elements don't have separate closing tags, but many of the elements we will use have an opening tag, content, and a closing tag. The very first line that we have seen at the beginning was something like this. It was something like this. This tells the browser that the document is an HTML document. Doc type HTML tells the browser that the document is an HTML document and that we want it to be explained using the mother HTML standard. Then we have the HTML element, something like this. So this is basically the root of our HTML document. Everything else goes inside it. So beside HTML, we also can write something like lang or was. Beside it was something written like this, equal and in. So let me explain it. These things which I have added right now is called an attribute. It tells us that the primary language of this document is English. Inside the HTML element, we have two major other sections, which are, write them, which are head. You can simply write the name and then press enter, and opening and closing tag will be added automatically. And then body. Inside the head contains information about the document that isn't normally displayed as the main content of the page. So for example, we write the title here. Don't worry if the things are a little bit unfamiliar, we will talk about each one in details. So for example, I want that the name of my web page be something like my first web page. Of course, it is not necessary to press enter every time. You can simply write the text here to make it look much clean and readable. Whatever works for you. The title doesn't, as I said, the title doesn't appear as the main heading inside the page. Instead, you will usually see it in the browser tab. Something like here when we browse it. We also have head. Something like, okay, I have written it here. It should be inside head. Okay, after the head, we have also something called meta character set. This is UTF. So this specifies the character encoding used by the document, and UTF-8 is the standard choice for modern HTML documents and supports a huge range of characters. And the next part that we had about body, the next tag, and this is where the content that we want people to see on the page goes. For example, here I want to have a heading like H1. I close it. In the H1, for example, I write something like hello world, and then I want in the body also have a paragraph. For example, P, this is my first web page. The P represents a paragraph. So now I have a very simple web page with a heading and a paragraph. At the beginning we say doc type, specify and tell the browser that it is an HTML document. In here, specify your language, which is English. In here, head, which I have added title, is the title of my web page, which shows at the top of the web page. And then the body, which we write things or content that we want to be shown on a web page. Don't worry, we are gonna show it because now I want to actually see my page. So another useful option during development is something like live server in VS Code. First, we go to the extension part. In here on the left, click on it. I search for live server, and then I will install the live server. As you can see, I have already installed live server, but if you have not installed it on your VS Code, you should click on that one. Then again, I go for the Explorer part. I close this part because I have already installed it. Now let's run our program. I click on, first of all, I should tell you that you can save it like a Word document. Press Ctrl and S button, then click on the file, go for open with live server, and you can see our web page is loading. Yeah, you can see that our page is, it's the title of our web page is my first web page, and whatever we have written inside the body is shown here. So that means we can experiment with HTML, make changes, save them, and immediately see the result in our browser locally. And for someone learning web development, that's really useful. So for now, you can only see it on your own PC. No one else can see it on the internet. So what we have actually learned today is, first, we learned that HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. We also learned that HTML is used to structure the content of web pages. We'll learn about the basic structure of an HTML document. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.